It is now time for the Port Podcast.
In 3, 2, 1, we are back. Thank you so much for joining us for another great episode of the Port Podcast. We have a very familiar guest back with us today. You might recognize his face from a previous show. Ray Gracewood, welcome to the show.
Thank you, guys. Nice to be here.
First ever returning champion. You're the only one to be on 2 podcasts.
Do I get a pin?
I got sound effects for that one.
Yeah.
We will get you an honorary port pin.
Nice.
You're part of our team anyway,
Nice.
Ray, so you might as well get the pin.
Okay.
We're stoked. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your day.
My pleasure.
I know it's been really, really busy for you, and I want to dig into that a little bit more. So for those of you, if you haven't maybe watched the previous episode with Ray, Ray, can you give the folks who might be watching or listening at home or around the world a little bit about who you are and what you're doing here?
Sure. So my name is Ray Gracewood. I've been not a lifelong St. Johner, but I've spent more time in St. John than I've spent anywhere else. I consider myself very much a St. Johner, and I love my city. I love the region. I love this place. And over the last, what's almost, I guess, 10 years now, we've really been focusing our time. I say we as in like a small team of us that kind of do Area 506. We try to create experiences here locally that make people feel better about where they are, and to try to make this place feel better. So Area 506 has been a music festival since 2016 was our first year. This will be our 9th year in operation. And last year we expanded upon the Area 506 Festival, created a second music festival as well called the Boxcar Country Music Festival. And then in 2022, working alongside the Port, who's been kind of engaged partners of ours since day one in terms of partners in all things land and kind of like corporate partnership, all the things. We've been working together since 2022 to bring the Area 506 Waterfront Container Village to life, which I think has been an incredible project for me to work on. It's an incredible group that comes together to make it happen. But I think really at the end of the day, it's kind of become a great destination for residents to come together for community events and to just have a great hang on the waterfront in St. John. It's a great place to drive local tourism. We see a lot of people coming through and look at it as a destination. And then I think also, too, a great experience for cruise passengers that come into the Port of St. John. As one of the first kind of experiences that they sort of interact the city with. And we do that through the use of entertainment and a vendor network that brings the place to life, and hopefully lots of color and artwork and all the things that kind of bring vibrancy to the whole space. But over the last 10 years or so, Area 506 has become something that we think of as how do we sort of capture and rebroadcast the best of New Brunswick. And we do that through music and culture and goods, and whether that's a concert or that's a cultural event of some sort, we're working with community partners, or goods, like the vendors that kind of make up the interesting things that are made here and created here, businesses that are run here, just trying to figure out interesting ways to bring all those things to life.
So to take us back to 2015-16, how did the whole original idea of doing a music festival and calling it Area 506 come to be?
Great question. At the time I was working for an amazing local company, Moosehead Breweries, and I've been, my career has kind of been rooted in marketing and branding and product development. I worked on the commercial side of that business. And one of the things that sort of was in my wheelhouse was events, and worked really hard for a period of time and eventually got into a relationship with the Harvest Jazz and Music Festival, now known as the Harvest Music Festival in Fredericton, New Brunswick, and walked away from that event for the first time because I didn't like to go to events that we didn't sponsor. So I almost like held myself back from going, but eventually went. And walking away from that, I was thinking Fredericton feels so much different after that experience than what I thought going in. Mm-hmm. And events like that happen all over the place. Harvest is an amazing one. But to me, it was like a sign that says, why don't we have this in St. John? Why isn't there something like this that happens in St. John? So a small group of us got together and had a meeting at the penthouse at Moosehead to talk about, what is the art of the possible and what are the kind of things that we'd like to do. And the original idea was like, maybe we do like a little concert somewhere, like take over a parking lot or something, like maybe, a little street something. And back and forth and back and forth. And I loved the idea, and I always thought that there was something in the pride of place, you know. What I will say is that I think the people of our region, people that visit here, have so many great stories and such a recollection, and they hold the place in such high regard. And then sometimes I talk to people that lived here, and I was having a tough time getting that same kind of energy back, you know, and that sense of pride, the pride of place, and a sense of, even place branding and all these kind of things. So it's like, okay, what do I think kind of makes the place special? And that's where we came up with Music Culture Goods. Music, I'm a big music fan. Culture was traveling around the province, and I think reputationally, New Brunswick didn't have the reputation of being a really diverse place. But I mean, the uniqueness of bilingualism in the province, the First Nations groups, like all of these kind of different cultural festivals that I'd participate in, I was like, there is such a story to tell here, you know? So like culture was like, there's a lot here. And then the last thing was goods, you know, like obviously at the time Moose said, I was kind of like, how do we do local? How do we make that more relevant, you know? And then I looked around, and we've got Crosby Molasses, and we've got Royal Tissue, and we've got Ganong Chocolates, and we've got all these amazing brands, Sabian Symbols that happen right here in New Brunswick. And we're like, what's the platform to be able to tell that story? And then the other piece was, the New Brunswick Day long weekend was known as the August long weekend, which blew my mind. It was like, that's the weekend where everybody goes away to the cottage somewhere else, I guess. Like, how is it not the weekend where we celebrate ourselves and our identity and all the things? So all those things kind of came together, and we were like, okay, it's something to do with the place. You know, it's going to happen on that weekend. These are the pillars, and came up with the idea of Area 506, and we were like, oh, there's a ring to that. You know, like anything that you start, it's like people are kind of, what's that all about? I don't know. I'm not sure how. But I love that kind of opportunity, because it's like, okay, well, if we're starting from kind of neutral, let's see what we can turn it into. You know, and I think over the last, call it 9 years or so, we've kind of just tried to build Area 506 into something that feels as though it makes where I am feel different, you know. And the other kind of piece is that even most recently, I think it's really special that we live in a port city in St. John, and I've always thought about it as very industrial. It's, you know, great for, you know, job creation and all these kind of really kind of important things, economic driver, all these things. But how do we make it so that it makes the residents of the city feel something? Like, what is it to reimagine what it is to be in a port city? How do you make that accessible? You know, so that's where we got into modified shipping containers. That was a big part of our aesthetic for a long time, obviously, is a huge part of the container village. How do we sort of bring that and make that something that's approachable, and we paint them vibrant colors? We sort of turn it into something that is a great consumer experience. And now I think, you know, as we look back, we're like, okay, feels like we're kind of on the right track here, turning something into, something that just feels like it's a part of the city that I can really be proud of.
I think it's really, really important to also mention that, you know, the team in which, you know, you guys are comprised of, and the volunteers. I mean, even through pandemic, you guys still made it accessible and inclusive and safe for people to come and enjoy music, each other, and to be able to see different business who have been through the incubator kind of process, and then also being full on brick and mortar stores now after the case. So I think that's a really important thing to give credit where it's due, is to your team and to all the volunteers and all the people that help make it still possible after those 9 years, because I know it's not easy. And I know it's a lot of people sitting at a table and really trying to make it work and working with investors and stakeholders. And I'm definitely proud to live in St. John. And I know that even if people are still planning to go away, we're now attracting even more people who may have never ever thought to come here.
Right. Yeah.
And that's a lot of pride for me. So I just want to give credit where it's due.
Well, I appreciate the call out to the volunteers and the team. It's like that's really the secret sauce on a year over year basis, you know, and having such a passionate group that has come together, and whether it's the crew that work with me in the office on the projects day to day, or it's the folks that come in for a weekend or a night, or they're working the gate, they're kind of doing all the things that it takes to make it happen. And as you guys both know, St. John is an amazing city for volunteerism, you know, and when, you know, you call out for a need on something to bring something to life, people step up. That's right. And that's been incredible, and we've been super fortunate. And I think it also kind of relates to a requirement for great corporate partnership, that, you know, so we start kind of very little. We build it up over time, and having those great conversations, even in boardrooms, where we say, we're trying to do something here that increases the quality of life. And if that conversation then gets into, well, if these are the kind of things we want to do more of, and we want to make it, more appealing to come and work in St. John, to move to St. John, to keep people in St. John, and what does that mean? It makes the conversation that much more relevant and easier with great corporate partners that we've kind of kept, almost since day one. So that network of corporate partnership that makes what we do possible is also a super, super important part to call out and appreciate from my perspective as well, because without that, the events that we do just wouldn't happen.
And I think too, having knowledge in what's happening in a whole bigger perspective allows you, from a logistics perspective, to have the best experience for your patrons and for your team. And if there's a safety issue or if there's something that happens, you're actually able to have a solution for it instead of it, being a problem. It's
a great point, because it's one of the things that makes the relationship with the port so special, and whether or not it's kind of working things through the container village or through our festival, it's actually kind of helped us create a network of support partners. And it's everything from the towing company to the crane company to the, like all the different services that we need to employ. Like a lot of that kind of starts with, the port network and us, and then obviously, trying to create this idea of making the port, an extension of the port as part of the events that we put on. Yeah. It just makes that sort of like network get kind of closer and closer.
So maybe we can give our listeners a bit of insight into how the Container Village came to be, because I got a lot of those questions, and I can share what we were thinking of as a Port Authority pre-pandemic, and it was just an amazing synergy, you coming to us kind of during the pandemic. So I'll share with everyone that there was a project that had been announced to go down in the area that is still a parking lot today, so not where the Container Village was located. It was going to be a really dynamic business that was going to be the first new major development from a tourism standpoint in Water Street in probably decades, other than the cruise terminals themselves. And unfortunately, that project, from a feasibility standpoint, was not able to come to be. And I know internally we were quite disappointed as a team. We really thought that we needed a catalyst. It was, Water Street just wasn't at the same caliber as King, Germain, Canterbury, Prince William. We know the data from cruise passengers; they just love St. John, but we need to be offering a better experience on Water Street. So we did a little internal workshop. We hired an outside party to facilitate, and we came up with the notion that containers would be a really interesting way to do something in that existing parking lot that we have. We call it Pugsley parking lot. Not necessarily in the location where your project came to be, but we were just kind of very high level brainstorming that a few of us that have traveled around have seen these container villages pop up. I had been to one in London. Other folks had been to one in Las Vegas at the time, and we were quite excited about putting together the art of the possible. Fast forward, the pandemic hits, and a lot of, we're working from home, and a lot of projects that we had at the port that weren't underway or weren't part of our big West Side modernization just were put on pause. Like a lot of people, a lot of businesses, we put ideas of that nature, and we never really got to a point where we had anything too concrete on that. And then you, Ray, approach us unbeknownst to I don't think you knew of our idea. No. You came up with something on your own. So maybe talk about how your idea became our partnership.
Well, and I think it was, it's just one of those kind of funny and amazing and beautiful stories of kind of timing and just alignment and thinking and all the things. And basically, it was a matter of, through that period of time, 2020, 2021, we started to kind of like relook at things a little bit. And quite honestly, for the first 4 years of Area 506, it was done off the side of our desks. Yep. It was we were all volunteers, and it was kind of just something that was starting to get a little bit bigger than we ever thought it might be.
Yep.
And that just, maybe it's the way that we're wired as a group. We started to say, okay, how do we kind of throw some fuel on the fire here, you know? And one of my things was always like, oh, every year we're kind of like, we're not quite sure how we're going to get the containers. We're not quite sure where we're going to be, and is this going to work out and that going to work out? And it's like, wouldn't it be great if we had our own place? You know, wouldn't it be great if we had our own place to have our festival? It's kind of like how it started to think. And then we thought about it a little bit as a group, and we were like, geez, what if we kind of like made the festival like one weekend goes into like a lot more weekends, you know? And like, what does that start to look like? Because, you know, the unique thing about our festival for the first several years was that we would bring in shipping containers and vendors would set up in them and all those kind of things. So it's always been in our DNA. And I guess in hindsight, maybe it was a little bit of a means to an end. People would look at me like I had three heads when I'd say, we're going to bring 70 shipping containers in, and we're going to put power to them, we're going to put lights into them, and then we're going to give them to vendors for free, and they're going to set up, and we're going to have people in and do all the things, and the artwork and all the whatever for 3 days. And then we're having the whole thing torn down and pulled out.
Right.
What are you thinking, you know? And maybe there was a bit of thinking to say, okay, well, let's figure out how we can work that into the DNA in our brand. How do we figure out how containers work and get people's minds open to them a little bit? And then I think we just started to have a strategic conversation.
Yep.
So on the port team, I remember sitting down with John Runcie, who's now become a great friend, and have conversations around, you know, like, you know, how could space be better used and more accessible, and how, you know, those kind of things. And I think it was a combination of us saying, okay, this festival thing could become like a bigger deal, and how do we blow it out into like create, you know, a sustainable business that you know might be seasonal, but it would like what, how do we look at? And then, you know, John, I think, showed me the rendering that was done, and I was like, that's kind of what we're thinking, you know.
And when you say sometimes life has a great way of working out and timing, we had that rendering, but even more powerful at the time for us, our internal conversations were when we relaunch post-pandemic, having just a regular old vendor tent is not going to be good enough. We need something new and exciting. We've talked about this enough. So you had a very motivated port, a historic rendering, and your ideas combined with your track record from 2016 in being a great partner and creating a world-class event. So it all just kind of, in our opinion, came together. Not what I'm so proud about the relationship. We each doubled down on our strength. You took the creative, and we took the how do we get government funding to make this work, because that's what we're good at, and you took 100%. What you're good at.
And I think too it was like a bit of a mutual understanding of like what's important to the business, you know, like how do the two things really come together, and you know, it like a great experience for cruise passengers makes it a more you know, makes it a stronger port to kind of like in all ways, you know, it's a stronger experience. And then on my side of things, it's like, okay, so how do we take this vendor piece and make it so that, you know, it's all season long, and like that's an important part of the business. And then the piece around creative, like how do we layer on graffiti on the artwork and all this kind of, how do we layer on the events that we want to do? How do we make it a community gathering place and engage different partners on kind of putting on different events and get really kind of aggressive in that space? Food and beverage, how does that work, you know? And just being a place where local food, local drink, local, you know, clothing brands, like all of the things kind of come together to create just a really dynamic thing. And I think really at the end of the day, it's been about finding, you know, like if this works really well for us, this works really well for us, how do we put those two things together? 1 + 1 = 3. And you start to have a great project on your hands. So
I love it.
Well, it's smart. It's smart decision making on all parts. And as someone who's lived here my entire life, I've lived here for 35 years. I always kind of looked at the waterfront to kind of be, you know, you might get to go walk a little bit, but there really wasn't anything for us to look at. And obviously, I've been pretty candid about it and learning more about the port. Of course, I would see the ships come in, and I know that there's economic value. I know that they're seeing things, but as a citizen here, I wanted more. Yeah. So, and then seeing how the festival has adapted and listened and tried to look at feedback and worked with new partners, I think it shows people that are looking to potentially be in the container village maybe in 2025, 26, so that there really is a business case there. And if you work with the right people, you can get your projects off the floor. So I think, my next question would be for those who maybe have never been to the festival or to the Container Village, what is that all about? And can you tell us if there's anything different this year compared to previous years?
Yeah, so when I think about the festival, and whether that's the Area 506 Festival or the Boxcar Country Festival, like I love the idea that it happens right in the middle of the city. And to me, we put a lot of bands on the poster, but I think being in the city that weekend could also be on the poster. And I've always seen that as a broader piece of the experience. And I think if we can do something that, it's Our Lady Peace and Sum 41 and Winter Sleep and all the bands will bring in the people that want to see the bands. But I think what brings people back the second, the third, the fourth year is just the amazing experience in the city, in and around it.
Yeah.
And I think for the longest time, we tried to do it with the temporary Container Village and the vendors, and that's kind of unique and different, and the lighting's beautiful, and there's 100 different selfie opportunities and all the things. And I think now the extrapolation of that is the Container Village, which also offers the same things. And it's another kind of reason to come into the city and just have an amazing weekend experience. And I think, we do what we can to make the whole festival vibe sort of seem as easy as possible, and it's our partners at the Delta, which is a hop, skip, and a jump.
Yep.
It's the Safe Ride program with the AMBL, where we're kind of running people in, safely and securely by bus all day long, making sure that food and beverage is affordable, all the things that you would hope to see in a relatively small market to really sort of like hopefully pay attention to the details and make it an easy call to come to St. John for an event, So we try to kind of like have the same line of thinking through the village as well. It's fully accessible, and whether that means that, there's no cost to get in ever, fully accessible in terms of working together on the boardwalk, which is an accessibility project we worked on together, so that it doesn't matter if you're 3 years old or 300 years old, it's just as accessible to everybody, is an important thing for us as well. But I think to me, it's like surprise and delight. Every year I hope that when somebody comes into the village, they feel a little bit differently about it. There's something unique and different, and this year's no different. So we're doing a full a new bar renovation, which we're really excited about. It's a sheltered space that I think is just going to add an added level of like just being able to sort of sit in and enjoy the space. Doing a lot with kind of like lighting and on top of the viewing deck. So it's the largest deck, I think. If it's not in the province, it's probably pretty close. Great view of the harbor, all the things. The back area, we're doing a lot of this unique sort of ground art exhibit kind of project that we're doing with a local artist here that we're super excited to unveil. And then finally, we're just finishing up with another artist from Lyon, France, who came in, who has this kind of like approach where he'll walk through the space and find things and turn them into other things. And the process of going through that with him has been really cool, where now we're sort of like, okay, what's the scavenger hunt look like to go in and find all these little pieces of art that he's sort of hidden throughout the place. And some of them are more obvious than others, but it's been super, super fun in that way. So hopefully people walk away inspired, and they've got a different appreciation of the city, and they just, it's we can't sort of take payment in smiles, but if we could, we've been doing pretty well the last couple of years, I think.
One thing I want to mention is I had the opportunity to be able to get aboard some cruise ships earlier last year. And one of the most common things that I heard from captains and crew was how cool it was to have a crew lounge here, that they don't see that anywhere. It's not something that's usually open to them. It's usually like a small tent with some beverages and a coffee, right? Like a typical vendor tent, right? Yeah. They've never had anything like that. And we would spend a lot of our time talking about the crew lounge. So I think that's, if you don't know, and a lot of people may not get to see the crew lounge, that's something that you guys have really been thoughtful. And I think it's important to also give credit where that's due, because you could take shortcuts on a lot of different things when you say that you're looking to help inspire the community or trying to make the waterfront more accessible to people and even to cruise ship passengers. But to be so thoughtful as to go as far as making them a crew lounge for when they're here, to give them a moment to connect to Wi-Fi, to talk to their friends and family, and to talk to them about their work, to talk to them about our city, I think is really cool. So if you didn't know that, people who are listening or watching, we have a crew lounge at the Container Village for the crew and captains of our cruise ships, which I think is really cool.
and credit where credit's due. I think it's another great example of just kind of a great collaborative working relationship to figure out ways that kind of create value on both sides. But credit on that one goes to Craig and his team. Natalie Allaby's worked really hard on that project. To kind of like have that as a feature. And my feedback would be the same as yours, Kate, where it's like I hear it, and it's a surprise to me because I haven't been as close to the cruise business, previously to this project. And I was like, really, there really isn't much of a thing, and their minds are blown,
Absolutely.
And it's sometimes when you think about, could be the cruise industry, any kind of industry, when you take care of the people that are take care of the people, that's where you really win, so it's the free Wi-Fi and this coffee, and it sort of goes a long way, so.
It makes them not only want to come back under a work capacity, but it also, I heard at least 3 ship captains say that they wanted to bring their family here. And because that this was here, and because they had been to the city so many times and had such hospitable customer service and just amazing experiences, they would absolutely love to come.
That says something.
Yeah. And to me, what I see also as a full-time resident here is I see more opportunities that are happening in the business sector, in music. I see more concerts coming. I see bigger bids on other things. And I love that for people who are living and staying and playing here.
Yeah.
So I have a question for you. What are you most excited about regarding the festivals this year?
Regarding I would say watching Craig do the magnetic bull, or the mechanical bull.
You heard it
at
here
the Boxcar
first.
Country Festival.
Okay,
So if he takes me up on that offer,
that's breaking news.
We'll bring the gear and we'll do a podcast from the bull.
Good thing the bar's being retrofit.
There you go.
Yeah. There's lots to look forward to. I think from even from a band perspective, there's a couple in the mix that we've been trying to get for a long time. Sum 41 on the farewell tour is a big deal, and it's kind of just it's just such a huge act, a huge Canadian act to come through. So excited about that. But at the end of the day, it's like getting back into it and bringing people together. And there's so few opportunities, I think, to bring in 4,000 or 5,000 people together that are all in a great mood, and the weather cooperates and all the things kind of come together. That's what it sort of is all about to me. So I'm just looking forward to kind of getting things started, and the festival now is like they're 2 of the bigger events that we do, but there's other things throughout the summer that really rounds out the whole plan. And I think the most important thing for me is the combination of all those things, the other development projects that are happening, the other announcements of things. It's just creating a momentum in the city that feels really, really good. And if we can be a small part of that, then that's a highlight to me.
So right behind us today is actually our first cruise ship.
Yep.
And next week's the second cruise ship. So you're opening the Container Village.
That's right.
To coincide. It's the exact same ship, different passengers next week that are coming in. Can you give us a little teaser to end here about what's new in the village that you're excited about? Are you allowed to share anything yet?
Well, I think the artwork piece is the stuff that I think is going to come through the most. I think once people get in, it's going to feel different. So I'm most excited about that. I think the other thing that we're doing for our opening weekend is that we're working with 62 different businesses. We spoke about it before in terms of our Vicky Day weekend project that we've sort of repurposed Victoria Day a little bit to have it feel like a bigger deal. So cruise ship on Thursday. Friday, we've got the band Sloan coming in. Saturday's Pretty in Pink. All the businesses doing all kinds of amazing things, everything from tours to custom menus to, pop-ups in store, all this kind of stuff. I just think it's going to be another great weekend for St. John that hopefully we can kind of build upon. So, for me, it's like, get into the idea of coming uptown St. John, and whether the Container Village is part of that or not, that's great. But there's lots of great things happening, and I think over the years it's going to be just become more and more and more, and pretty excited about that too. So
next week, come down to the Container Village, everyone. It's going to be open. It's going to be a wonderful time.
Yeah,
you heard it here first.
I think that's an applause, clap.
Applause. No, we really, really, really are excited. I can't wait. I just feel like there's a lot of really good energy, and this is also very good motivation for businesses and for, people who are, just trying to hustle. It helps when you see other people working as hard as other people. It makes you want to work, right?
Yeah,
so.
I think so. And it's a relatively small city where, there has to be a lot of collaboration, you know, and have to feed on each other to get energy and to kind of do things and stay motivated on things. And it's not always roses and rainbows, you know, like, and at the end of the day, it's one of those things that, if there's some successes there that we can kind of continue to build on, we share those with other people and share those learnings, just makes St. John a better place to do business.
Well, thank you, Ray, for joining us on the show today.
My pleasure.
And thank you all for listening and watching. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below. We'll be sure to get them over to Ray. And thank you all for tuning in to another episode of the Port Podcast.
Thanks so much for listening.